Hello everyone, welcome to the
6th
internally screening Hooptober review. My name is Rupert.
My name's Adam.
And today we're going to be reviewing another cult classic, My Bloody Valentine, which satisfies the 2 films from 1981 category. This film's directed by George Mahalka, it's a Canadian film, and it's set in a sort of mining town in Canada. I don't really know what area. And bad things start happening when a Valentine's party is going to be thrown in the local town. And as you would expect, with slasher formats kind of growing more and more popular at this point in the sort of recently post-Halloween era that this film was released in, there is a dark and storied past with who might be committing these crimes. And our ensemble of teenagers are in deep, deep trouble. Adam, what do you think of My Bloody Valentine?
I found this to be a deeply enjoyable watch. I was watching this with absolute glee, it has to be said. Right from the get-go, we get like a kind of bit of a non sequitur opening horror bit where they're down in the mines and we establish our kind of the killer's get up in the gas mask with the pickaxe. It's very distinctive. It's a great kind of disguise. I almost wonder if they were somewhat inspired by like Darth Vader with like the breathing of it.
Maybe.
Like that, the all black. I don't know, but it just kind of
maybe, yeah.
It might fit. And then he unceremoniously kills this young blonde woman by putting a pickaxe in a wall and then shoving her against it, and it like pierces this heart tattoo she has, and like the skin around where the axe point's coming out kind of bends and bows before it gets fully pierced through, and that just kind of set the tone of like this is the kind of level of gore and violence you would expect. And I think through a lot of these films we've been watching for Hooptober, I've been yearning for films to kind of be more bold with their violence, I guess. You're watching horror films, you're including violence, and then so often you go, oh no, what if people get too grossed out? It's like, no, go full throttle. And this film goes full throttle most of the time, until maybe the final act when we're down in the mines, things slow down, and I think that's probably my least favourite part of the film. But honestly, like those first 2/3 of the film, I was fully on board this roller coaster, and it was so nostalgic to me in a way I'm not sure I've quite felt from a lot of 80s films. Maybe it's because this is one I'm not so familiar with, and so to discover it and be like, wow, this is such an embodiment of everything I think about the 80s, that really, I don't know, comforted me, warmed me whilst I was watching all these teenagers getting murdered.
Well, there's nothing better than watching teenagers get murdered.
Clip
and
that.
Yeah, I completely agree. Oh yeah, clip that. Put that on my CV. Apparently this film at the time was actually quite controversial for just how violent it is.
Oh really?
Which I didn't know until having finished the film. And I do remember being, as I was watching this, quite taken aback at several points in this film at just how fucking gruesome this film gets, which is definitely, it's one of the strongest points, because if you're a slasher film, it's like one of the cheapest, most overly diluted, kind of bastardized genres out there. And if you're gonna do a slasher film, at least do it justice and go hard as fuck when you're gonna kill someone, because that's what people are there for. And yeah, this film like absolutely delivers on that. I particularly liked one kill where someone gets like stabbed through the face, and it like pops out one of their eyes. I was like, wow. And the effects actually the effects in this film just generally, for the most part, looked really, really fucking good.
Yeah, they did.
I have like several issues with it. I don't know if I'm as keen on it as you are, but it's a film that, unlike a lot of films that I would sort of rate similarly, I think I pretty much completely agree with what you said in terms of the first sort of 3/4 of the film moved really quickly and didn't really waste any time or meander too much. It just kind of felt like really briskly escalating the tension, which I did really like. I felt a little bit mixed in terms of the killer himself, in terms of the design. One of the reasons I put this on the Hooptober list in the first place is because I remember seeing an advert for the remake of this film when I was a kid and thinking like, oh my god, this looks friggin' brutal. And like I'm not gonna watch the remake because it's like some really shitty 3D era remake that looks absolutely dreadful. But as a kid seeing that advert, I was like, wow, that looks badass. And I think something that this lacks, which a really obvious comparison like Halloween has, is I never felt as threatened by the main antagonist as I did by, say, Mike Myers. It's kind of hard to describe, and I don't know if you've seen the original Halloween, but he kind of has this almost bizarre aura where he just like, he feels like a machine that just can't be stopped. And I didn't quite get that from this guy. I don't know, what was it that you liked so much about the antagonist?
Well, I don't know, the antagonist was probably, as you say, probably one of the weaker elements. It was more, I guess, how they used the antagonist as a plot point to just kind of further escalate the violence and threat that these people were under. Specifically, I mean, other than the design, which I've already praised, the character's quite thin. I mean, the same can be said for Mike Myers, but he is just so naturally threatening, and I guess they pay him more attention. They kind of colour in his backstory a bit more. You know what, in some ways this feels like kind of a pale imitation of Mike Myers in some way. They talk about this guy that committed murders years ago. He was trapped down in a mine, and the Halloween party was going up.
I mean, it is basically the exact same formula, yeah.
Yeah, and then he goes to a mental hospital, he reaps his revenge, blah, 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 blah. Oh, he's escaped, oh my god. So that element of it is pretty by the numbers, but it doesn't become an issue for me until the end, where they do their big twist, which we'll probably get onto. I don't know if you want to get onto it right now.
Well, before we get onto that, I just wanted to talk about the characters. So the characters were a kind of a mixed bag for me, because it's kind of like an ensemble cast. I actually thought that something that can be quite irritating, I actually thought that the love triangle that the film puts forward is pretty well done, for the most part. It's not like amazing or anything, but
it's
for
effective.
Such a cliched plot point, it's I found myself kind of invested in it, whereas so often these things can be really sort of eye-rolling. It actually kind of worked very well, and provides plenty of tension within the plot, and made those characters, the three of them, much more interesting to watch. The main problem with the ensemble cast is there are a few characters who are just really annoying kind of 80s caricatures, and I know that's kind of the point with slasher films, because you're like, oh, I can't wait for that one to get killed, and then it happens, but it can get a little obnoxious at some points.
Well, who in particular were you thinking of when you're thinking of your obnoxious characters?
There was one character, I can't remember his name. He's one of the ones who goes down into the mine. I guess a light spoiler, he doesn't make it out.
Very few people do, so it's not much of a spoiler.
And, well, in fact, two of the men that went down into the mine were quite annoying.
Oh, did you not like Moustache Man?
Not really, no.
I just rated him for his tash.
I rated him more as it went on, but in the beginning I was like, I can't stand this fucking guy.
Oh no, I related to him. I just felt like a bond with this big, beefy, mustachioed man. I was like, wow.
I mean, I rate the look. It was just I don't know, it's really hard to put your finger on it when something is just oh god.
Something just grating about him.
Yeah, and the same with the main female protagonist's best friend was also really jarring.
There is a pivotal plot point where a character dies, surprise surprise, and she just doesn't shut the fuck up. It's I get it, obviously your character would have some kind of horrible reaction to this happening in the moment, but the way the film drags it, it's so frustrating, because it's just perpetual, and you're like, oh my god, please give me a break, please. Yeah, it's just insufferable.
I've actually just been thinking about it. I think the main thing I could criticise this film for, in terms of, while I absolutely love the violence and the look of the main antagonist, I think the main thing this film lacks, which something like Halloween has in spades, is a kind of a spooky atmosphere. This film sort of tries to establish that. It has this kind of fun thing where every time someone is about to get killed, they receive this Valentine's box with some ominous message and a piece of his previous victim.
Often a human heart.
Yeah, normally a human heart, which I love, is very, very 80s and silly and fun. But maybe it could almost come down to a lack of a memorable score, because obviously I think the reason that Halloween is still remembered and is still held in such high regard, that score that everybody knows, and the moment it plays, the film becomes 10 times scarier. This film, it just didn't have that same atmosphere, and it feels almost like a wasted opportunity, because the setting of it with the whole mine, and
quite a isolated town as well,
and the setting it on Valentine's Day instead of Halloween.
I liked all that. I mean, it did, now that we sort of hold it in comparison with Halloween so directly, it is quite, you can see quite how much it takes that formula and tries to twist it. It's oh yeah, this is Halloween, but we do this and we do this. Oh, you think the villain is this person? Well, actually, no, it's not. It's not just the bloke you thought it was, in Halloween. Ooh, blah, blah, blah. That kind of cheapens it in some way, but I don't know. I'm not sure I 100% agree with the lack of atmosphere. I certainly agree on the score, because again, I think when the score does come in, it does feel like they're trying to copy that John Carpenter theme ever so slightly. The increasing like eerie piano notes, the pling 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 pling, you know, just gathering pace as you're supposed to be scared. But I think it did a good job. That the tension built from murder to murder, and the creativity of each murder as well, like anticipating what's going to happen next. How violent of a way is someone going to go this time? That for me built the atmosphere sufficiently enough.
That is absolutely the film's greatest strength. I can remember so many of the kills in this film, and like the great effects things that they do, and the tension and how they set some of these things up. It's all obviously cliche stuff you've seen before, because the slasher genre is just quite derivative, but it doesn't really matter because it does it in a way that is not only like looks really good. There's like a lot of really, really good effects in this, but they do a good job. I'm thinking of, I guess this is a slight spoiler just because I'm going to have to say the location of one of the kills, but the shower scene, I was like, oh my god, they're going to do that. And then when it happened, I was like, oh fuck yeah. It was like, it was great. And it looked great, and the sound design in it was excellent. And like the reveal, because you see it and then they cut back and then someone goes in to look. It was just like very tight and well done in that regard. Yeah, I guess I want to talk about, I guess we're in full spoilers now. I want to talk about the last quarter of the film, because I immediately agreed with what you said. I think that's kind of where the film lets itself down a bit, and could have pulled out a banger ending, but instead feels like it kind of forces a twist that, looking back on it, I'm not sure makes a whole lot of sense.
No, it doesn't make any sense, because they have to shoehorn in backstory immediately at the twist in order for it to make any sense.
The film almost retcons itself. So essentially, in the history of the town, there was a Valentine's party, and during this Valentine's party, 3 miners were left unsupervised in a mine for like an overnight shift in the mine. Apparently that's something people do. And they die, except for one person who survives, who only survives through sheer force of will and a little bit of cannibalism, and promptly goes mad, murders a bunch of people during the next Valentine's thing, and threatens, after being institutionalized, that if they ever throw another big Valentine's party, he will come back and reap his revenge. So you kind of assume that as these murders are happening, he is the guy committing the murders. So is literally the Mike Myers backstory. Guy from the asylum gets out, he must be the one who's doing it. And then in the last act of the film, there's a big twist, and the twist is that it's not actually this guy is dead, and instead the person who's been committing all these crimes is the son of the was he the mayor?
I'm not 100% sure what
the blonde guy. He was the son of someone powerful, and he was doing it for, I can't even fully remember why he did it.
The only reason they give is that he sees his father killed by the original guy, Harry Warden. He's traumatized as a young child, and then 20 years later, for some reason, that means he wants to go and do the exact same thing. It's only explained literally at that moment where they like pull the mask up and go, oh my god, it was you. And literally at that moment, like one of the characters goes, why? And then it goes flashback, and then we see it. And it's so basic from my perspective, and I think it's something the film is deliberately trying to do, is that I spent the whole film going, okay, it's either that blonde guy or the brown-haired guy, because we're drawing so much attention to them through the love triangle. There's a tension there that has to be resolved at the end. They're a good and a bad. It's just which one ends up being good and bad. And so I think a visual cue that movies often use is, blonde guy good, and then dark-haired man bad. And so the dark-haired man has been out of town for years, and I was maybe expecting there was going to be some like sinister backstory where he ended up in the asylum, and he got talking to this Harry Warden character, and that corrupted him, and he felt the need to do those crimes. And then maybe you could have revealed the other character's backstory earlier as well, and then really drive the audience to kind of pick out between these two characters, like, well, if it's not who I think it is, and it's one of these two characters, then who is it going to be? I have all the information at my disposal, and then the reveal at the end would be that much more satisfying and established. What we get instead feels kind of obvious and yet completely nonsensical.
I'm similar to you. I felt it suggesting that twist, and I was like, that just wouldn't work, and then they did it and it didn't work.
Yeah, well, the thing with it is that he immediately changes character at that point. As soon as they reveal, oh, it's you, he suddenly becomes the fucking Joker. He suddenly becomes a complete psychopath, and he starts giggling to himself in this like really stereotypical, like caricaturish Hollywood idea of mental patient way. Like he's like, you'll get yours next time, and it's like, what? You were a normal kid like 5 minutes ago. What the fuck happened to you? The film just kind of completely changes the rules of its character, or the characterization of it, just for this moment. Even beyond that, the action and the pace of that final mine set piece was really slow and tedious. Like they kept repeating things and just walking down corridors and stuff. There were a couple of cool moments.
Yeah, the final set piece in general felt like a bit of a wasted opportunity, because obviously the film is so set around the mine, and a mine is a great place for a horror film to take place, and it's not really overused or anything. I mean, there's maybe like a few horror films that have used mines, like maybe The Descent being the first one I can think of, and that's not really even a mine. It just felt disappointing, because the setting is obviously so well primed for horror. But yeah, it does kind of feel very stop-start. There's a bunch of fake outs. There's like a few people who are like, well, obviously that's going to happen, and then it does, and it feels a bit predictable, and it just kind of feels like you're not using that environment to its absolute maximum potential. And yeah, that final plot twist really just kind of must have served to be some kind of surprise, just to sort of viscerally shock the audience, because it's actually much less compelling the moment you think about it, and because you've now moved to a character with this completely improbable motivation. Doesn't really make sense from a character that had perfectly interesting and well reasoned, within the bounds of insanity, motivation. The plot twist is one step backward. It also just brings up a whole bunch of logistical issues. I haven't watched the film twice, I wouldn't be able to say, but watching it knowing the twist, there must be a case of how does he go get changed, then do this, then come back, get unchanged? Like how often was he, especially in like the sort of second half of the film, he must have been taking that costume off like constantly to pull off all these murders.
Yeah, quite. I assumed that it was kind of the film masking the chronology of the film, like not necessarily telling things in as straight a line as we imagine, that maybe there is less time or more time between certain scenes in order to allow that to happen. I will say there's one funny and gruesome bit in the mines that I did enjoy though, which is where they're climbing up the shaft, up this really tall ladder. The villain pulls a rope and he yanks down like the dead body of someone that's ran off earlier, and his body falls, hangs himself. I mean, he's already dead, but then the force of it's so strong it yanks his head off his body, and it's just such like, for a portion of the film where there's been so little gore, it was like such like a holy shit moment of like sudden jarring violence.
Yeah, that bit was pretty excellent. Like I said, I don't think there's really, if you want to go into this film, you're one of those people who's just like, I just want to see people get killed and I want it to be entertaining, you can't really go wrong with this. It's a pretty solid slasher, especially within the really early formation days of the genre. You can't really go wrong with this. It's quite easy to recommend to fans of the genre. I don't know if I'd recommend this above like a more of a staple, like something more foundational like Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Halloween, but it's still very, very solid for what it is. I'd give it a 6 out of 10. What would you give it?
Well, I think I was more enamored with it than you were, and I found it viscerally entertaining, and I think I would recommend it alongside those films. I'm surprised this film isn't more iconic than it is. I'm familiar with it by name, but not by reputation. It's just something I've heard of, but not really seen much reference to, which surprises me for how brutal and distinctive and charming it is as a film. So I would give it a 7 out of 10. It still has its flaws. I wish the ending was better, but an excellent roller coaster ride of a film.
Yeah, no, that's a pretty fair analysis. So this has been our review of My Bloody Valentine, the 1981 version. If you like this review, like it. If you dislike this review, dislike it. If you want to see what we might be reviewing next, check out the Hooptober list in the description. That will have all of the films that we either have already reviewed or we will review this month. So check that out if you're interested. Subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed it. That has been our review of My Bloody Valentine. We'll see you, if you're watching this today, we'll see you tomorrow. If you're watching this from the future, who knows? But I've been Rupert.
I've been Adam.
And we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Peace.